country. Diane, let's bring you in with us because, of course, you've been following what's been happening in academia and libraries and the change of language, particularly in children's books at least. But this control of language is absolute key to the way the government is controlling the wider public.
Thanks very much, Brian. And hello, Ben. It's good to be here today. I will be coming back to the control of children's minds through language and library books later on in the program. But first, I would like to talk about change and language and control overall. And this starts with this conference that I attended over the weekend, which is the Academy 2025 conference, sponsored by Ideas Matter. I went last year for the first time. It's kind of an academic, intellectual conference that's held every summer with themes like politics and literature and history. Last year's theme was about the end of civilization. This year was slightly more cheerful with the theme of upheaval and asking the question, why does politics need a new language? And I think there are a lot of discussions over the weekend that might have explored whether or not we actually need a new language or, kind of what is happening with language in general. So I just want to pull out a couple of things that I found particularly interesting from the conference. And then I'd like to just reflect a bit on what I heard and maybe get some ideas from Brian and Ben about this. The opening keynote speaker was Professor Frank Ferretti, who was at the conference last year. This year's talk was called The Search for Home in an Alienated World. And this is based on a Substack post that he posted on Saturday morning, and he's been working on this idea quite a bit lately. When we talk about the idea of what alienation means as a definition, which was originally a Marxist term, and over time it's kind of, as he said, kind of floated over into populist language. But essentially the problem that we're facing now with this idea of alienation in society is that the common shared reality that we've experienced in the fairly recent past has gone away, that we still need a shared reality, but that we're losing that because of this estrangement that we're feeling in today's world, and that some of this seems to come from the control of language and the imposition of language that our governments have placed on us. So starting in 2020, for example, we all know the new language that came out, like the technocracy, COVID language related to things like new normal, social distancing. So it wasn't about physical distancing, although that was part of it. The idea is that we are supposed to be socially separate. Even redefining the term vaccine, right? Where vaccines were supposed to originally, we thought, prevent something. And then we find out that no, actually, they don't prevent anything at all when it comes to so-called COVID and so-called vaccines. We see the Trump's language, his confusion that Trump creates with all of the overwhelming language that he uses. And there's a lot of Trump language, including social media posts and in other places. Even the term two-tier Keir has sort of influenced highly the public opinion of Keir Starmer and what he's done so far for his first year as prime minister. And what he sort of said is that because of these language changes, one of the things that's happened is that we're no longer supposed to be proud of the community that we live in, that the quest for home is a normalized thing where we used to kind of have a sense of home, maybe whether it was where we grew up or where we live currently, but that we can't have that sense of home anymore. And we've lost cultural connection, and we've lost emotional connection to where we used to be able to say that these are the groups of people or individual people that we love and care about. And we're not supposed to do that anymore because that then excludes people. And with this language of inclusion, saying that we're supposed to include everyone everywhere, that actually creates isolation and a lack of a sense of community. And he made an interesting point that the idea of discrimination, which is basically illegal now in some ways, is that it used to be good. It used to be good to say that it was discriminatory, to that you had made a discriminating choice or a discriminating idea about what you were doing or the people that you're associated with. But that this imposed language leads to make us think that discrimination is automatically bad. Imposed language leads to this alienation because of this forced sense of, the definition of exclusion and inclusion being inverted and so on. All of these things that we're seeing in corporate policies and what the government is imposing on us in terms of hate crime incidents and so on. So he then commented on Keir Starmer's Island of Strangers speech, which he put out in May. So let's take a look at this clip and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
Good morning. I'm doing this because it is right. because it is fair and because it is what I believe in. Let me put it this way. Nations depend on rules, fair rules. Sometimes they're written down, often they're not. But either way, they give shape to our values, guide us towards our rights, of course, but also our responsibilities, the obligations we owe to each other. Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart.
So he received some pushback from this speech. And the reason for it is because some people felt that it referenced back to the former MP Enoch Powell's so-called Rivers of Blood speech, which he delivered to a conservative association in Birmingham on the 20th of April, 1968. And we'll put the full text of the speech in the show notes in case people are not familiar with it. But just to quote from one paragraph of the speech, that when he said, "It almost passes belief that at this moment," and this was 1968, 20 or 30 additional immigrant children are arriving from overseas in Wolverhampton alone every week. And that means 15 or 20 additional families a decade or two hence. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. We must be mad, literally mad as a nation, to be permitting the annual inflow of some 50,000 dependents, who are for the most part the material of the future growth of the immigrant descendant population. So Keir sort of went back on this, and he said in June, and this is a statement from an interview, he said, "I wouldn't have used those words if I had known they were or even would be interpreted as an echo of Powell. I had no idea, and my speechwriters didn't know either." So obviously these are not Keir's words, but he used them and didn't even really seem to know what he was saying, it would seem. Something else that I want to bring in from the conference, and I'm going to go back to this book later and hopefully do an interview with the author. This book is called The Memorizers, and it's by a lady from Northern Ireland called Rosemary Jenkinson. And she was a very interesting person to speak to. And she gave me a copy of her book to read. And just to read from the back cover, it says it's basically a dystopian satire fiction novel. And it says, "Your truth is the wrong kind of truth." And that's at the top of the back cover. And it says it is a blistering portrayal of World War III and a satire on the West's current assault on free speech. Jo, who's the main character, is a journalist reporting from the front line of a war-torn country. One day she wakes up in a hospital after being caught in a drone attack. The problem is she can't remember the story she was covering. And it has a satirical government warning on the front right before the book starts. And it says the book comes with a Class A mental health warning. It may propagate deleterious desires for individualism within the reader. We can't have that on in 2025 in the UK. It may lead to disaffection within society, and whosoever circulates this book with a view to undermining government authority will be subject to state sanctions. And so what are we seeing now? Well, we're actually seeing this taking place in real life. If we look at just over the weekend, we saw from Angela Rayner, our deputy prime minister, said that she is going to put the banter police in your office. And this is a headline from the Daily Mail from over the weekend. "Watch what you say by the water cooler. The workers' rights bill pressures firms to spy on so-called inappropriate conversations." And this is the employment rights bill, in which case employers must try to protect their staff from harassment by third parties. So we're seeing, once again, here's just, ultimately the control of language in your office, in your home, and so on. And just to leave this segment with something that was in my hotel room at this conference over the weekend, a quick quick photo of it. We see here even the manipulation of language, even within your hotel room. Because, of course, if you've been in a hotel anytime in the past few years, you see that hotels no longer want to clean your room or change your towels or make your bed, because somehow that's going to be bad for the environment. So we were given 4 choices of the cards to hang up on our front doors of our hotel rooms. 3 of them were to donate to a charity if we chose to not have our room cleaned. The one that I chose was to spruce up my room. So we see that, again, the green language, the spruce, the tree, sprucing up your room. I put that one on my front door. And for whatever reason, Brian and Ben, they never came to clean my room. And I had to use dirty towels on my second day there. So I guess they were trying to force me to follow the agenda, even though I made a different choice. So I don't know what you think of that, but it was a very interesting weekend and a great conference.
Diane, well picked up, because of course, yeah, we're being manipulated everywhere we go now. If we stay in a hotel, never mind what they're going to say about changing towels, you're going to have the big TV screen on the wall pumping out BBC 24 hours a day. So this is going on everywhere. And language is the key to control of all of us. So we've got to be very, very aware of what the language is, how it's being used, and what the true meaning is. And a lot of people picking up on that clip about Keir Starmer saying what an untrustworthy prime minister he is. I think the word is dangerous.